Anybody feels this today to shout out an amen or something in the chat. Indigenous wisdom, Black futures. There's a saying that the Shona people of what is now Zimbabwe say, when the roots are deep, there is no reason to fear the wind. So, my dear friends, gathered in the name of justice, of spirit, of sacred responsibility, I bring a word rooted in the Black experience in America, in conversation with Indigenous wisdom. But it's not only for Black and Indigenous peoples, it is for all people of conscience. So if you are not Black or Indigenous, your call is not to center yourself, but to stand in solidarity, not to fix, but to unlearn, not to lead, but to follow the wisdom carried by those whose ancestors bore the weight of colonization and enslavement. It's not about guilt. It's an invitation to transformation, for the stakes are high. The stakes are nothing less than life itself. The waters we drink, the breath in our lungs, the dignity we defend, and the future we hand down. We live in a time when the earth is groaning under the weight of empire, groaning under racial capitalism, colonialism, militarism, and a theology that too often confuses dominance with divinity. And yet these groans are not only cries of despair, they are labor pains, the trembling of a world giving birth to something new. It is the cry of rivers choking from poison, the breath of children who deserve clean air, the voices of ancestors rising from the soil. What is collapsing is not the sacred, but the system. And what is stirring is not fragile, but unstoppable. Something is being born. And so the Spirit asks us, especially Black folks, and especially those whose ancestors were colonized, enslaved, or displaced, will we continue to pour our sacred energy into saving a burning house? Or will we come home? Home not to another land far away, but home to the truth of who we are. Home to our ancestors' wisdom. Home to sacred relationship with land, with community, and with spirit. It's not about crossing an ocean, it's about crossing back into ourselves. It's about reclaiming what empire tried to force us to forget, that our belonging is not dependent on the empire's acceptance, but rooted in the sacred and in one another. This crossroads is not new, it is ancient, but the choice is urgent. Will we cling to what is crumbling, or will we dare to live into what is rising? The empire is failing, and that's not a tragedy. For generations, we were told that if we climbed the ladder, waved the flag, prayed, and voted hard enough, the system would embrace us. But the truth is clear. The system was never meant for our freedom. It was built to use us, not to liberate us. As Fannie Lou Hamer said, this country is full of lies. And as the book of Revelation declares, come out of her, my people, so that you do not share in her sins or receive any of her plagues. To come out is more than leaving a building. It is leaving the logic of empire, the worldview that measures life by profit, that blesses tanks while ignoring the tears of the oppressed. When empires fall, When empires fall, those who worship them tremble. But those who refuse their chains are set free. Babylon's collapse is not the end of the story. It is the clearing of ground for something sacred. I want to tell you a story. In November 2016, Chief Arval Lookinghorse, 19th generation keeper of the sacred white buffalo calf pipe, issued a summons. Come to Standing Rock. Stand with us in defense of water, land, and the sacred. This was not just about a pipeline. It was about prophecy. It was about protecting not only a river, but a worldview. It was nearly midnight when I landed in Bismarck, North Dakota. I had reserved a car, but the agency had run out, so I was upgraded to a luxury SUV, which seemed a bit excessive for a solo traveler, but I would soon realize what a blessing it was. After 3 hours of driving, I reached a checkpoint where officers stopped me. I then drove another 4 hours in a different direction, navigating snow-packed roads, detoured by law enforcement, trying to mislead and intimidate clergy and allies and journalists. I finally arrived at the camp at daybreak, and I saw a scene I will never forget. Fighter jets circled overhead, armored vehicles lined the roads. Snipers watched from the hills. I heard stories about prayer circles that were attacked with rubber bullets, tear gas, and freezing water in sub-zero degree temperatures. This was not policing, it was warfare. Colonial warfare on U.S. soil. What happened at Standing Rock echoed Gaza and the West Bank. Surveillance drones, sound cannons, military-grade weapons used against people in prayer. And this is what you're endorsing when you proudly say, I am a capitalist. Talk about political violence. So I checked in at the camp's entrance and then went to the tent where gifts were received. Some Chumash friends here had advised that I take blankets and tobacco. And then I was directed to the registration area. After checking my ID, the first thing they did was use a permanent marker to write a phone number on my forearm, the number to call if I was arrested. You see, a wealthy ally had set aside funds to cover bail, they told me, but I would be on my own if there were a delayed court date. Standing Rock was not only an indigenous struggle, it was a mirror held up to America. It asked all of us, what side are you on? Hear me now. Empire is global, but so is resistance. Empire's violence is not confined to one place. If you are not indigenous, know this, Standing Rock was not isolated. If you are not black, know this, the police violence Black people face is not isolated. Empire is global, but so is resistance. From Ferguson to Standing Rock, from Gaza to Soweto, from Puerto Rico to the Amazon, from the Mississippi Delta to East Oakland. The same tear gas used in Ferguson is used in Palestine. The same chants for freedom carry from Soweto to Atlanta. The empire's reach is wide, but the spirit's reach is deeper. Every time the oppressed refuse silence, we declare that resistance is not regional, it is global, ancestral, and unstoppable. Let us be clear. Black and indigenous peoples are not interchangeable. Our histories are distinct, but our struggles are braided together and we need to acknowledge it. Both have been targeted by settler colonialism, both criminalized for resisting, both told their sacred ways were irrelevant, yet both resisted, not only with protest, but with prophecy. Not just with fists, but with ceremony. We, as African descended people, must remember we are not merely children of slaves. We are descendants of herbalists, astronomers, griots, midwives, survivors of civilizations. The Underground Railroad was not only escape, it was spiritual blueprint for freedom. And we must also remember Indigenous peoples have kept sacred ways alive despite genocide. Their resistance, like ours, is not nostalgia. It is survival. Again, it is prophecy. So the prophet Jeremiah says, stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. And oh, how we need rest for our souls. We are at a crossroads. Empire is not the way forward. The ancient paths call us back. Some of you may have seen how there's much speculation and suggestion, maybe serious, maybe in jest, of people proposing that blue states secede from the Union. Some even saying we could just join Canada. I have no energy for that. That's a white liberal solution because it does not address the displacement and genocide of indigenous peoples. It does not speak anything to reparations for the descendants of enslaved people. It does not deal with the reckoning that we need that speaks to the flaws and the faults of empire. The ancient paths call us back to communal economies, to healing justice, not punitive systems, to ritual, to song, to spiritual ecology. These are not relics of the past. They are keys to a livable future. So when I speak of Black futures, I do not mean assimilation into capitalism. I mean freedom beyond empire, a future where food is grown, not bought, where healing is communal, not criminalized, where children are taught to be whole, not merely employable, where land is sacred, not monetized. This will not be funded by empire or legislated into being. It must be built from the ground up by us. Black futures draw on Hush Arbors, freedom schools, the Harlem Renaissance, and Pan-African movements. Our task is not to start from zero, but to water seeds from our ancestors, the seeds already planted, to breathe life into dreams they refused to surrender. And so if this is not your personal story, if you are not Black or Indigenous, you're still called. Not to lead, but to stand behind, to protect, to support, and learn and ask yourself, where may I be complicit? Where can I step back? Where can I share resources, platform, or land? Where can I unlearn harmful narratives? The future demands all of us, but not all of us in the same position. Listen, all nature groans and cries. It cries, let the empire fall, let Babylon burn if it must. For while empire collapses, the village rises. While Babylon crumbles, the earth still births. While domination decays, liberation takes root. The universe speaks, come out of her, my people. Come into the sacred, come into your calling, your standing, your power. When the winds of empire howl, we do not need fear. Our roots run deeper than conquest. They stretch back to Africa, to Turtle Island, to ancestors who endured the lash, the bullet, the auction block, and still sang. Their voices are the soil beneath our feet, reminding us no empire can bury what spirit has ordained to rise. So let the sacred rise. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. And let us walk together into the dawn of a future already breaking open, my friends. Let's pray. God of my mother, Ruth, God of my father, David, Spirit of our ancestors, breath of the earth, fire of liberation that will not be extinguished, we give thanks. We give thanks for the roots that run deeper than empire, for wisdom carried in song, in ceremony, in story, in dance. Strengthen us, O Spirit, to leave Babylon behind, to walk ancient paths, to stand in solidarity, to live as if another world is already being born. For Black wisdom, for Indigenous prophecy, for children yet unborn, for rivers and mountains and our breath. And let the people say, Amen.
Well, from the spirit within you, that was a wonderful message from our revolutionary Jesus. Yes. And our ancestors before us. I recall several of our speakers that you've had who would take us back to the connection, the love of how God, how the spirit and the earth, all of it was a part of them. So there was no need to own things or to have to control things. It was all moving in the spirit. It was all moving in earth. All of it was a part of who we are, which I could see the creator who created absolutely everything and gave us the wisdom to work to work with it. I can see how he allowed that to be something that we're not to control, but that we are to live with. All of this, what empire has created, is just all about profit, money, and so on. I want to open this up because I know what you spoke. I think of Kalumba. I think of Masen Kumseya. I think of the young lady that took us back to earth. I'm trying to remember her. She took us back to how everything was a system with the water and the land and caring for, not just so that everything could care for her people, but also that caring for her people, the system was so that the animals would also be cared for. That's the beauty of Indigenous people. The beauty of my grandmother going to the earth to get medicine for us, to share medicine. She would come up with natural remedies. And her her healing many times was just connecting with the spirit. So I just want to open it up because Pastor Moore, whew, that was revolutionary, Lord. Beautiful. Brigitte, is your hand up or no?
I have something.
Flint?
I love, you know, we get so drawn. I get so drawn in to this right wing, left wing. You know what I mean? How about I'm a radical independent, and I don't even want to be on the bird. The bird is capitalism, and you know what? That right and left wing, those wings are flapping because the bird's telling them to flap and keeping everybody busy and saying, get back in your hamster wheel. Don't worry about what's going on. You know what I mean? Uh, we need to step away from all of that system. And because it is cancer to humanity and the earth as a whole, because it separates us from the earth. And like you were just saying, Sheila, the connection with the indigenous community is the realization that we are part of the earth. We're supposed to be doing there's a purpose. God put all of us, everything on this earth here for a purpose as a whole. And we're not doing our part. Well, as a whole, we're not. There's a great bunch of us who see, wait a minute, we're supposed to be doing this a whole different way. And thank God we have spaces like this where somebody says it just as blatant as that. Hey guys, you know what? I think we need to really look what we're doing here because, hey, I fall into that too. Like, man, I've had a week. I've had a week. God bless everything going on right now. But it's part of the right left wing bird bullshit that keeps us distracted from the fact that we're humans and that we should be human to one another and that we should care about every single human on this planet and that we should care about the planet first so those humans can live there with in harmony with everything that's around us. But we're distracted because the news says, "Oh, look at this" or "Look at that." Hey man, I'm so sick of it, you know? And there is another solution and it's the simple solution, you know? Uh step away from capitalism.
Mhm. Bonnie.
Hi. I just wanted to share. I posted something on my Facebook page, but I'm sure you guys have seen it. It's a politician, I think, somebody that's been on the news, and he said the crux of the main point of what he said was, we need to make America beautiful, or go in a different direction. We can't make America great again because it ain't great. It never was great. So I really like that because America was never great. It was always growing, but never great. So thank you.
That's beautiful, Bonnie, because I think about how we're always waiting for the law to, and we're peaceful people overall, but we're always waiting for the law to change things, and then that takes however many years, and then it comes around and it goes backwards. When in actuality, like it was said in the message, this all just needs to stop. We're tired of waiting. It needs to be torn down, and even waiting for reparations. It just all needs to change. Looking for.
I think the beautiful part, Sheila, is this though. We are
Shella.
more can we are more Sheila, we are more connected now because of the technology around the world. And when we watch what's going on around the world is standing up. And that gives hope because you know what? Every revolution we've seen in history up for the last couple hundred years have been individual little fires in different spots. And it took a minute for that revolution to be able to be telegraphed and told. And so, you know what I mean? Now we're getting instant responses to see that around the world, people are starting to stand up and say, hey, this isn't right. And I think instead of us looking at it as a America thing, we should start looking at it as a global thing. Because you know what? The reality of it is, I don't want to be a part of America if America isn't part of the world.
Yeah, Clint, as you say that, you remind me of how important um, indigenous solidarity is. I know that I've had the privilege of attending a few conferences in the U.S. and in Canada, and then where indigenous people gather from all over, not just North America, but from islands and from other continents. And there's power in that. And, there was a tremendous power in the freedom movement of the 60s, when there was a connection with, as you know, with Black people around the world. But then, Black liberals kind of put that fire out. You know, honestly, it was, the NAACP had a big hand in just saying we need to focus on, us and this country. And, it lost a lot of momentum. So yes, we do need we need a global sensitivity, a global awareness.
Hey, that was a dope sermon. That was on some Asada Shakur. That was on some Winona Duke. That was on some Kwame Tour stuff right there. That was some Desmond Tutu stuff right there. That was a sermon for the homeland, and I felt that spirit. Thank you. Like that. Yes. The Something's always felt off about me about this succession conversation here, and folks say, and you named it very, very poignantly for us. It's a succession is a tool of domination. It's part of that. The South did that. That was a part of still it's succession from humanization. They're still participating in the dehumanization process. It's succession from being one with nature. It's not succession from a nation. It's actually continuing their separation and isolation. And so I see that. I hear that succession is like that's not it. We actually need so the opposite of succession is humility, to be able to join with one another, to come together. And I think of when you and I were standing in Chicago together at the Parliament of World Religions, and for better or worse, Jesse Jackson was up there being honored for his work and his years, and the idea that you are somebody, and it's like we are all somebody, and when we
I
all
am
join
somebody.
together, exactly. And so, just that energy of like we all need to recognize that, and that we are connected in that. And it's like succession doesn't get us anywhere. Like it just kicks the stone down the road a little bit, because the roots still haven't been dealt with. And so, yeah, there is no reparation with succession. That's not reparation. That's just continuing the domination system. So thank you for naming that today.
Matt, I was just thinking of Chicago as well. I was thinking about one of the sessions we were in, and I had told you before, and we talked about this again and again, how the response to imperialism by indigenous peoples has never been to try to redeem the constitutional state, but to get their land back, to get their dignity back. And we as Black people, historically, not universally, but Black people have tried to redeem the state, have tried to fix things. And I just felt like, the indigenous people had something for us to learn. Instead of investing all of our energy and trying to, what Dr. King called, being integrated into a burning house, why don't we learn something from indigeneity? And yeah. So I was thinking of that same situation.
The Constitution never saved indigenous people. Treaties have never been listened to. They've been made, but they've been always just rolled over and disemboweled and dismayed and just seen as a piece of paper. So they've never been honored, and the human life of indigenous people has never been honored. So, yeah.
And at the end of the 19th century, after emancipation, the left and the right made a deal that created Jim Crow. So I'm very suspicious of the left and the right coming up with plans, left or the right.
Has anybody ever considered giving each tribe a congressional seat?
It's done in New Zealand.
That's what I'm trying to say. The Shumash should have one vote in Congress. Every single tribe that has a spot should have a vote in Congress.
They're trying to do that in Canada. That's part of one of the 94, part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is to have parliamentary seats for all of the for each First Nation people. It hasn't been done yet, but that's one of the demands. One of the 94.
True reparations would be giving them a say.
Yeah, that would be a starting place. because
Yeah.
we also have to recognize we have this body called the United Nations, but none of the indigenous nations are are
Yeah.
represented there.
None.
You know,
Not
even
one.
though Canada calls them First Nations, they're never they have no place in what. It's not the United Nations; it's United States. That's
Yeah.
what it's the United States of the world, United Governments,
Exactly.
So
The
yeah,
collective colonialists.
They're all
yeah,
pawns. They're all
They,
pawns. They're all pawns in the scheme, the historical scheme of this country's in position of empire upon everyone else. And so even within the tribes, our brothers and sisters are intentionally separated from each other. Okay. And that's intentional. You know, empire doesn't want for one voice peoples. They don't, it is, does not fit, you know, their historical, you know, paradigm of how we want things done. So it's hasn't happened because they're not letting it happen. They're not allowing for it to take place. It's deep. It's like this whole Epstein thing, you know, because we can't stop talking about that shit either. Because the reality of the fact is that it's trenches and trenches of dirty, evil,
yes.
demonic peoples that are involved. This whole thing of this, the assassination of this guy. I'm not even going to say his name. I'm not even going to say his name. It is unfortunate, but you know what? What was more unfortunate is all the shit he spewed.
Mm.
You know, he was a
Yeah.
bigot, he was a racist, misogynist, etc., etc., etc. And there's going to be people who are going to be like, Rosie, just shut the fuck up already. And that's okay because I'm going to keep on talking.
Mhm.
Okay.
Hey, Mike.
Diane Fox and someone else have had their hand up quite a while.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Michael. That's right. So Diane Fox, let's hear you.
Oh, I just had a couple of things that, to bring in. Do you know Valerie Kaur, a Sikh American woman? See No Stranger is her book, but her comment is, are we living, is this the darkness? Okay, we're in darkness. Is this the darkness of the womb, the tomb, or the darkness of the womb? And I love that correspondence to what a beautiful, beautiful, powerful talk today, Pastor. Thank you. And then another thing, and this is kind of askew, does this feed into what's the dominant power or not? But there is a man named Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso who is, as I understand it, and I don't understand it well enough, I hope somebody on this screen does, but he's taken the gold of Burkina Faso and said, this is ours. We're going to deal with it for our country, not ship it off to the metropole. Somebody, I hope, can say more about that and whether that's true or not. That's a rumor that I've heard.
You know, I will say this, and maybe at some point, Julius, if he's still here, can, you know, Julius is Nigerian and very much in touch with African developments and politics. But I just want to say that everything I hear about Ibrahim Traore is that he inspires young Africans across the continent, you know, but boy, it came across like a lead balloon when 2 weeks ago, his country criminalized homosexuality.
Oh,
So, you know, that's backward. That's, you know,
okay.
yeah, that's seriously problematic.
Yeah. Thank you.
I see Brigitta's hand.
Well,
Oh, well,
Michael, did you weigh in
Michael's
yet?
Michael has to come
Can-
before Brigetta.
Michael, I'm sorry.
Just piggybacking on what's been said by all of you, but the poisonous foundation that this nation was created in, the founding fathers, the white landed aristocracy fathers who wrote the Constitution, deemed Black people to be 2/3, right there in the
Three-fifths,
foundational
yeah.
document, to be 2/3 of other people. Disenfranchised females, the whole infrastructure that we've regarded as this beautiful greatness was poisoned.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh, Michael.
Or was a step, and now it's up to carry the step further, much further, or back or further, as you want to call it.
Mhm.
Brigetta?
This is just kind of a public service announcement, but on October 30th at the CEC downtown, that's the Community Environmental Council, they'll be showing a movie about First Nations up in Canada. And what they're particularly highlighting is that human beings' use of toilet paper is slowly but surely decimating the boreal forest where these indigenous tribes live. And they have a lot of interviews with them and they talk with them. And I'm really looking forward to seeing it. So maybe you might want to put that on your calendar.
Can you put a link in the chat, Brigitta?
I will try to do that.
All right.
And today the CEC is sponsoring a film, The Cost of Silence, about the human health effects of not only the Gulf oil spill and the spill here 10 years ago, but the blocking, the company's refusal to take responsibility, and not only refusing to take responsibility, but blocking access to health care. So that's at 4:00 at Marjorie Luke Theater, if anybody is in town.
Thank you.
Julius is waiting. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the powerful message, Dr. Moore. And I've been listening to all the comments, taking it all in. Please excuse the background noise as usual. I'll start off with the Burkina Faso issue. I didn't see that update, Pastor. I'll probably dig into it a little bit. But Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they are kind of countries in the Sahel that have been previously dominated by France. And what's exciting is that those three countries have kind of banded together and managed to displace France and are in the process of attempting to use their natural resources for their own peoples. We'll see if they are ultimately successful, but it's inspiring because this is what we should have received after the independence movements in the 50s and 60s with people like Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba in Congo, but it was derailed purposely by the Western imperialist forces by assassinations and political maneuverings and such. So I'm going to assume that it's true that Niger banned homosexuality.
Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso, excuse me. I looked at through a lens of if we go back in African civilizational history, there was no anti-gay gay, anti-lesbian,
Yeah, I
anti-this,
preached about that
anti-that.
last week. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
like
colonial thing.
yeah,
It's a
that's a
Western
colonial
thing.
thing. And Burkina Faso didn't transform itself instantaneously into a progressive place just because Traore is president. He's still within this social structure that's heavily influenced by colonialism, and it's unfortunate. But in the longer arc, if this is successful in Burkina Faso and it spreads across the continent, which is the ultimate Pan-African goal, to reclaim all of Africa, which is a continent that dwarfs many land masses on this planet. If all of Africa can be united, the potential there for all the progressive ideas that people in this country have, people in Europe have, so you're so much closer to making that happen. So it's unfortunate that that law was passed, but I just knowing the colonial influence on all the African countries, I'm not surprised. Now, I want to go to something I think Clint was mentioning earlier, that this is a global situation that we're in, and it's not a left or right issue; it's a human being issue. And as Dr. Moore was saying, to really solve the problem, we got to tap into the ancestors, the indigenous ancestors, whether they're in New Zealand, here in North America, South America, in Africa, China. They lived in harmony with nature, and capitalism is the antithesis of that. And to really bring it to home, something that Rosie was mentioning is that racism, white supremacy, which is what capitalism needs to separate and divide us so it can create a working underclass. It is the ultimate form of division uh, of human beings by setting up an artificial label of a group of people as unequal, undeserving, and worthy of diatribe and condemnation. And we saw that come to stark relief starting this past Wednesday. Another example of the double standards of this social structure that is deeply in contradiction to its stated ideals. And to the gentleman that just spoke before me's point, Michael, that it was embedded in the Constitution itself, this contradiction. And this is the past 72 hours, in my perspective, were so critical because the cost of the contradiction of racism in this ostensibly liberal, democratic, free, egalitarian society, the contradiction is such that it's liable to cause an explosion because you need to label and have an other and describe them as unworthy and describe them as some other race in order to justify what you're doing to them. But the problem is you're in a global structure where you've got BRICS now with China, Russia, India, China
Was it
coalescing to
BRICS is BRICS, Brazil,
yeah,
Russia,
Brazil,
India, China, South Africa.
exactly, to act as a counterforce, if you will, against Western domination. But in this particular country, what happened on Wednesday, you had, I'm not going to say his name out of respect to Rosie, you had an individual who made a living, a capitalist living, off of ridiculing, demeaning, dehumanizing other human beings. And he was open and blatant about it. And he would go around to college campuses and universities and public forums and have a debate. And laudable as that is, in the sense that you are open to debate, that should not be sufficient to overshadow all of the harm that your words are doing to other human beings. And the point is this: when he was killed, the social structure in this country, especially the right social structure, immediately began attacking the usual suspects from their perspective, which is the radical left, the Democrats, trans, uh, people that are progressive, universities,
HBCUs.
HBCUs. Immediately, there was no evidence of who had done it, how, and in what way, but you could see that almost to a T, they were all singing the same tune and ginning up their bass. And there was a risk for about the past 72 hours that we were going to have a Fort Sumter moment, meaning that some people were going to be so riled up, so ginned up with bigotry and racism and hatred that they were going to do something that would cause an irretrievable, um, catalyze an irrecoverable chain reaction of retribution and counter retribution that would lead to a conflagration, such that in order to resolve that tension of racism within a country that says it's ostensibly democratic and egalitarian, and the tension of slavery that existed from 1789, when the Constitution was ratified, until 1865, was just such a tension. It was kicked down the road. I think someone has used the term kicking the stone down the road. If we, let's say California secedes, well, you're just kicking that stone down the road. The fundamental contradiction is we have racism embedded in this country, and it's not meeting up to the ideals. And that civil war, the cost of it was ultimately heavily borne in terms of the dead and the wounded by the Euro Americans themselves, those whom we call white. And what I'm here to say is, if this contradiction, racism, white supremacy, is not resolved peacefully, if it's not resolved peacefully, the full measure, the burden of resolving it after a Fort Sumter moment that will be triggered by an event that we cannot foresee will ultimately be borne by the working class Euro American people themselves. Because the conflagration that will surely come, which we were pretty close to in the past some people may have slept through the past 72 hours, didn't understand how close we were. The conflagration that will come will be borne most heavily by the Euro-American white working class people, who will be fighting amongst themselves for control of power. And then it will be up to people like us that are gathered here, just like the abolitionists during the 1861 to 1865, to see which side in this great contest that's coming will move the ball closer to the ideals that ostensibly this country says it stands for. So those are kind of my impressions from the previous week, tying it into what Pastor Moore said and tying it into some of the comments we heard. Um, we need, I keep saying this, we need to unify with our Indigenous brothers and sisters, unify across ethnic lines, class lines. But the problem is, the elephant in the room is racism, white supremacy, and it was embodied in the language of the governor of Utah, no less. Almost
Yes.
a therapeutic, speech, if you will, when he said, and this is very revealing, he
Yes.
he wasn't praying. He said he was praying that it wasn't one of us. And it's odd. He wasn't praying for the country. He wasn't praying for unity. He wasn't praying for the widow of the gentleman that was killed by gunshot. He wasn't praying that the first responders would find the culprit quickly. He All he wanted was that it wouldn't be one of us. And by one of us, he didn't mean people that look like myself and my son here. He meant white Republican voters, Christians, in quotes, And that is the problem. Yes, Francisco. Yeah. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
I
David's
say a little something
David's
so that.
Dr. Dave. Mhm.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
First of all, Pastor, thank you for a very powerful and beautiful and moving message as always. Julius, I always enjoy your comments and learn a lot from them. And I love your son's
Put it in my backpack.
Julius, I fear, I think your concerns obviously are very well placed, and I do fear that we could be heading into a spiral of violent retaliations. And I just wanted to point out the great irony that although the man was a race baiting white Christian nationalist, um, it's to me it's incredibly ironic that the match that might link the tinder that is our country at this point is a white man killing a white man. That's my comment.
and
And
oh,
Matt.
Matt.
Yeah, I just want to, Julius, thanks for that Fort Sumter comment there. We've had a friend, Tim Nassinger, who's spoken here before, and he's been highlighting other moments in history that have been kind of that Fort Sumter moment. And he's looked at the violence that erupted in Colombia when they were going through their peace negotiations. And then there was this moment in, I'm not familiar with their history, he's more familiar with it, but he's highlighting that one. And also, you know, the German one, we're familiar with is Kristallnacht, and it was actually that erupted out of a killing of I think it was a kind of a communist leader that was kind of coming out of Spain, and so that these moments are then used, and then Hitler used that moment to then fuel this, like, oh look, they're coming after us, you know, and so so these moments, these Fort Sumter moments, as you call, you know, like we need to it's hard not to let our anxiety make them real, but also how do we stay grounded in them to let them not become a Fort Sumter moment, to stay united with people and to make sure that we do have control of the narrative, or that we remember our power to say the truth and to make sure the narrative doesn't get out as far, and to be able to speak across lines and as far as we can get them to have as control of the narrative, because yeah, that's, remember our power. So thank you for that Fort Sumter comment. And just to Dr. Dave's comment of like, it's white on white crime, but I've been hearing people say this is right on right crime. And so we need to be naming that also.
Thank you, Matt. I just was going to add to what Julius was saying. He was talking about the you know, some of the countries colonized by France in Africa, and I don't know, Julius, if you saw the hot mic moment of Emmanuel Macron about a month ago, where he said of Burkina Faso specifically, but of the Sahel, those once French colonies, he said they forget how easily they forget how much good we've done for them.
You know, also, Julius, it's so funny you say this, because there was a rally down in Huntington Beach by white supremacists right after. And, you know, a lot of people don't understand, even in California, there is a very big white supremacist movement, whether it be in Bakersfield, Ventura, or in Huntington Beach. I'm going to tell you what, as somebody who's been to prison, I know, because I've seen the skinheads, and I know they walk around with swastikas on their body, lots of them, lightning bolts. They get the lightning bolts for stabbing child molesters. Now, these guys are there, and they're very active, and they will and they're not right. You know what's funny is everybody thinks the right wing. No, they've got their own agenda as well. And guess what? They're the ones that are. It's white on white crime. It's just and then both of those will use the minorities as the scapegoat. It's the scapegoat. This
Yeah.
look, it's time for revolution. I'm sorry, I'm gonna be the one to say that, but this is just me. I'm that extremist, independent who doesn't want to be part of the bird no more. And you know what? It is so disturbing to watch it destroy itself, but at the same time, God, we need something different.
I think you see Bonnie's hand.
Bonnie's hand.
Hi, I've been listening to this and it's all good stuff, but I asked this question repeatedly to different groups and I usually get ignored or whatever. They don't have an answer. And I wanted to ask Julius and David, in Africa and in other countries, how are people with disabilities treated? Physical disabilities that are obvious. Some are not, but how are we people? Are we part of the scene? Are we, and that's where I'm coming from. Yes, I want to be part of the scene, but I have to always watch it because some people are not nice. And my question is, are we part of the earth? Are we part, in different places? We are here sort of in the US, but not much, not much. So thank you.
Well, Julius, your hand is up, so why don't you go ahead and weigh in?
All right. So I'll take the disability question first. So I was born in Nigeria, and my family brought my brother and I to the U.S. when I was 8 years old. And I speak Yoruba because I was born in the part of Nigeria that is the Yoruba people. And I've only been back to Nigeria once. So my interactions with Nigeria mainly come through family who go back and forth more often, and just knowing growing up there my first 8 years of living. In terms of people that are handicapped or have going on tough times, of course, it all depends on the material circumstances of each country within Africa. It's a big place. So some African countries are more wealthy than others. So South Africa, relatively more wealthy than, let's say, I don't know, Mauritania, or let's use Sudan. But I think it's safe to say, just in my readings and my learning from Africana studies professors, that the African culture up and down all of the continent is sharing and taking care of your elders and taking care of those who are not as fortunate as you, which would include people that are handicapped and incapacitated. That is the goal. That is the emphasis. So in Africa, it'll be rare that you'll have, at least historically, you'll have nursing homes, because your elders will be living with you. They'll find a home for them, whether it's with their immediate children, or if their children are incapacitated or dead, extended family members. So people being homeless and just kind of wandering the streets aimlessly, even in the most destitute African countries, it's probably not good. You're not going to see that often, unless you are in a heavily colonized part of Africa that has accepted capitalism almost as a religion. And you're probably seeing more of that
And that
happening.
definitely exists.
Yeah, it happens. There's parts of Africa where it's like that. I'm tap into the Africa as it was before colonization, and that still lives until today. So having your relatives be homeless to Africans even today would be like, we need to find a solution for that. So that's that. But I wanted to comment on Clint. He mentioned lightning bolts. And when he said lightning bolts, it triggered something in my mind. And we've all seen photographs of the scene of the shooting that happened on Wednesday. And remember, that gentleman who got killed, there was the first stop of his um, American comeback tour. And he had like a tent that he was sitting under. And in front of that tent were signs, I think it said American Comeback. If you look at the iconography, and again, this is open white supremacy that this social structure is not putting on a pedestal. The vice president himself went to escort his casket, right? If you look at the iconography in front of his tent, lightning bolts of red, white, and blue. Again, if you connect the dots, folks, they're not being
No, they're
this
not
is
even
not
being. They're not
euphemism.
being. It's blatant.
It's
Hey,
blatant.
when Cash Patel says "See you in Valhalla,"
Yeah.
that's
And,
skinhead.
and Clint, that ties into what Dr. Moore was talking about last week, right? Black, and brown faces with white hearts,
Yeah,
right? Cash Patel, brown man, Indian, should know better,
yeah.
but he's made his peace with the white supremacists, and I guess the money must be good, but those are the contradictions
Mm-hmm.
that we're dealing with, and they go deep, and they even touch upon religion because this gentleman that was killed, he's the ultimate Christian, right? He'll quote you scripture and verses, and that this runs deep, folks. And to resolve this contradiction, it's not going to be everybody get around and let's sing kumbaya. That's
Nope.
not how slavery contradiction was resolved. We want it to be resolved peacefully. We pray, we extend the hand, but there are some amongst us that have lightning bolts that don't want to shake our hands, including that governor in Utah who wasn't praying for unity, wasn't praying for the widow, wasn't praying for the assassin before they knew who the assassin was. He was just praying that it wasn't one of us. And we know who that is. So that's what we're dealing with.
I just want to say that I believe that the indigenous way of life, which we've seen all over the world, where families, tribal, that kind of living where you take care of everyone, like was just mentioned. Well, Bonnie and Julie mentioned that you take care of your seniors. You all live together. You all kind of have this role that just your role fits in the family unit, which I think a lot of us we had well, I know Africa's that was that way tribally, but also in the South when we were here and had to survive, there was a more caring for your family. You had to. That's the way back.
That's the way back. That's the way back, everybody. And gosh, uh, I I hate to end the conversation, but we started this project out 5 years ago, going 1 hour, and pretty committed to it for a while. But wow, these conversations, my friends. I hope that everybody continues in prayer. Live in the spirit. Don't get too distracted by capitalism. It can be devastating. It's ruthless and always requires somebody to be a victim. Let's have communion. And Jacob's note is please use people with disabilities instead of handicapped. So we want to remember that. Thank you, everybody, for your beauty and for the counsel that has been exchanged, many presences and many voices, which is really what communion is, as described in 1 Corinthians 15, 2 Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 11. Sorry about that. As described in 1 Corinthians 11, it's not communion if some people hold privilege over others. So there has to be a relinquishment of privilege so that we are one body. We acknowledge that we are one body. And so in doing that, I ask you to take whatever you have on hand that represents the flesh and the blood of Christ. It could be a Dorito and orange juice. That doesn't sound like a great combination, but maybe it works for somebody. But whatever you have on hand, come, Holy Spirit, rest on our bodies. May we find renewed strength for the day and hope for tomorrow. Go ahead and eat and drink. Yeah, I hope to see somebody Wednesday. Sending out love to everybody.